Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. Can everyone see the slides?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so let us start our class today. So before that, we just briefly look into what we have been studying in the last class. So in the last class, we looked into what are the means the a brief overview of these upstream, midstream, and the downstream processes, and we were mainly focused on the strain development. So in the subsequent next 2 or 3 classes, we'll be mostly looking into the techniques and the processes how we can actually develop a microbial strain which can be used in a fermenter for the production of any biochemical. So this is the first stage. First part we will be mostly focusing on. So this is on the strain development. So we looked into briefly what are the different techniques by which you can develop your strain and so that it can withstand the different effects that are there, different engineering effects or other conditions that are there in a fermenter system. And also we can effectively produce the product with a lower number of downstream processes. Okay, so it is always desirable that you produce less number of byproducts. Okay, such that the number of downstream steps that you are required actually it's lower. Okay, so, so if you see the difference between the means the natural stain, so we saw that what is the importance, why it is important that we convert the wild stain or the natural stain to modify into a industrial stain, which can be used in a fermenter system for production. Because the wild strain possesses several disadvantages, like it has the lower growth rate, lower product formations, and lower concentration of your desired products. It, along with the production of your the particular product, it will produce a series or a mixture of other byproducts. Okay, so that is undesirable because those byproducts needs additional steps for their removal. However, in this case of the industrial stain, we modify them in such a way and they have their high growth rate, higher product formation rate, and higher concentration of the final product that you obtain. Okay, so these are the advantages of the industrial stain, and also they are genetically very stable. They are also one of the main challenges that we have seen is that whenever the product is produced or whenever we have, for example, a substrate that is going to inhibit somehow the concentration. So if that concentration of the substrate and the product is higher in the fermentation media, that is going to hamper the microbial growth. Okay, so we need to develop a microorganisms which can withstand or tolerate this high concentration of the substrate. So if the concentration of substrate is higher, then only you are able to you are going to obtain the higher product formations. Okay, only and that can also only be obtained when the biomass concentration is higher. Okay, so so all these three things, the substrate concentration, biomass concentration, or the cell concentration, and the product, they are actually related with each other. Okay, and that is why we need to design the industrial stain in such a way that it can withstand higher substrate concentration. It can withstand higher product concentration, and it can also produce at have the high growth rate, so that the overall biomass concentration is significantly higher. So so these are the characteristics of the industrial stains that we have looked into, and some of the ideal characteristics that we were looking into. That when you are modifying, suppose you are going to modify a wild stain or a natural stain to an industrial stain. So what are the characteristics you would like to introduce? So we already talked about that it should have lower byproducts. Then it should able to means reduce the overall fermentation time should be lower, so that the overall energy consumption and those things should be lower. Okay, so then we have other things like for any microbial fermentation, we know they require, for example, the oxygen. Okay, so it should have the lower oxygen demand, because we already talked about that the oxygen gas has some lower solubility in the media, for example. Okay, so if and when you are doing the fermentation, if when the biomass concentration, if suppose the biomass concentration is represented by X, when it is very high, okay, then the oxygen demand of actually increases significantly. Okay, so And so there is a competition between the solubility of the oxygen in the media and the actual oxygen required by these microorganisms to for their metabolic activities. Okay, so hello,
Yes, sir.
am I audible now? Okay, fine. Hmm. So, yeah, we were discussing on this part where that we need to supply the adequate oxygen gas. Okay, and even we supply that high concentration of the oxygen gas, we know that the solubility of these gases is actually is fixed, right? So we have to maintain that oxygen concentration in that in the culture in such a way that that it should be. So we have to maintain the biomass growth in such a way that that whatever oxygen we are supplying is adequate enough for the growth of the microorganisms. Okay, so it is always means it is always good to have microorganisms which will have the reduced oxygen demand, so that we can go for the higher biomass concentrations. Then we talked about the foam formations, like the proteins are the responsible components for the formation of the foams. So somehow those type of proteins should be the extracellular proteins which are released by the microorganisms should be reduced, so that the overall foam formation is reduced. Okay, then we talked about that along with the tolerance of the high concentration of the substrates, it should be resistance to the infections or, for example, any other contaminants. Okay, so we know that if you are, for example, in the industrial scale, if you are working, so in the lab scale, we have, for example, from 1 liter to the 3 liter or maximum 10 liters of bioreactors. Okay, so if there is a issues of contamination, then whatever the loss is, it's the economic loss, right? So whenever if you have a contamination, all the components, media components, and all the things that are there, you need to throw out away. So in this case, in the lab scale, it is okay, but in the industrial scale, you will have, for example, from 1,000 liter, 100 liters to 1,000 liters. So if there is some sort of any contamination, okay, so then it is a huge economic loss. So therefore, for this type of industrial strain development, you need to develop a strains which are resistant to some sort of an infections or some sort of bacteriophages, viruses, or bacteria, and so on. Okay, so we need to maintain a very high sterile conditions. Okay, and the microorganisms sometimes they are very means easily affected, gets very easily contaminated. So you have to make some microorganisms, design some microorganisms which are resistant to those type of infections or the contamination as such. So then we have looked into these 7 points. There are other some of the important points that are there, that you should be taken into consideration when you are designing an industrial strain. So we will look this into from today's class, and maybe we will have some question answers session in the tomorrow's class. So, if you see the nutritional characteristics, so as we have discussed that it should be able to use a very cheap medium, okay, and or a predetermined one. For example, we have seen that in the last class we talked about the agricultural residues, right? So, agricultural residues are one of the cheap source of the carbon that can be provided to the microorganisms for production of any particular biochemical. But they are, once it is cheaper than, but when it is cheaper, it is having a mixture of different components, right? So in the agriculture biomass, we have the cellulose, we have the hemicellulose, and we have the lignin. right? So but and when you're hydrolyzing these things, only the cellulose is converted into the for example the glucose residues. Okay. So if you hydrolyze the cellulose, so cellulose is a long polymeric chain of the glucose units, and if you hydrolyze, that means you are breaking these chains into the smaller fragments. Okay. So when you break those into smaller fragments, what you obtain is the glucose. So the glucose can be used as a carbon source by these microorganisms, right? But you have the other components of the hemicellulose and the lignin. Okay. So you can design the microorganisms in such a way that it doesn't not only consumes this glucose derived from the cellulose, but it should be able to take into consideration the hemicellulose and the lignins also. Okay, so it should be able to utilize all the three components that are present in the agricultural waste. Okay, and then use it for the production of any value added chemicals. Okay, so as of now we are working, most of the industries are working on utilizing the this type of agricultural biomass for the production of the ethanol. Okay, so ethanol production, because we are going to use, for example, the ethanol for the as a biofuel. Okay, so most of the, and we know that major issues in the management of this type of agricultural waste. So India actually produces a lot of agricultural waste after the harvest, crop harvest is being done. So those crop harvest waste can be used for the production of the ethanol or the any other sort of a biofuel, if we can design very efficient and high producing industrial microbial industrial strains. Okay. Then there are some other sort of energy source, for example, the methanol. So methanol is actually is produced by several petrochemical or the chemical or petroleum industries. Okay, as a waste product. So that methanol can be used for the production of this type of, for example, the biofuels, okay, or any other additives. Similarly, if you see in the case of the petroleum based industries, there is a lot of waste that is generated in the form of the hydrocarbons. Okay, so in the case of these hydrocarbons, and also like if you see the fossil fuels that are, for example, the spillage of oils in the ocean floors, so there is a, so we need to design some microorganisms which can take up the hydrocarbon directly. So what are the hydrocarbons? So hydrocarbons can be an alkane or alkene, a long chain of this type of carbon and hydrogens. It can be alkane, alkene, alkyne, right? And generally, petroleum-based products are the longer. It can be aliphatic chains of carbon and hydrogen. So microorganisms cannot take or consume this type of long chain, because microbial system do not have any enzymes which can break down this type of long hydrocarbon chain into shorter fragments. Okay, so that is one of the challenge. But these days we have already designed some microorganisms which can actually use these hydrocarbons as a carbon source. Okay, and hydrocarbon as a carbon source for production of any type of other type of the bioproducts or so on. Okay, but still now most of the work is done on utilizing this the oil slippage or oil spillages that occur. Okay, in the ocean floors or in the, for example, the soil or the land. So for that bioremediation of those type of oils, so the microbes are generally taken and they are sprayed onto that particular area where we have these oil contaminations, and with time these hydrocarbons are degraded by the microorganisms. So like this, depending upon your targeted objective, you can design, for example, the industrial strains. Okay, and then we have already talked about possibly that when you are doing the fermentation process, there are several metabolic activities are going on, because first of all we are having the very high cell concentrations, and that actually releases some sort of a heat. So we have already talked that the microbial fermentation process are generally are exothermic processes. So in the exothermic processes, what is happening? The heat is released in the system, and overall temperature increases as the fermentation carries on. Okay, so if the adequate temperature of the fermentation is, for example, 25 degrees Celsius, then in that case you have to supply the cooling water to maintain that 25-degree temperature. But if you see most of the microorganisms, when they release heat, when that fermentation is taking place, they are almost the temperature is around 40 degrees. Okay, the around 40 degrees centigrades. So it is ideal that when if that particular microorganisms, if it is ideal that if we can modify that microorganism in such a way that it is able to grow in a temperature range of 40 to 45 degrees. So in that case, what will happen? Whatever the heat is released during the microbial growth and the microbial metabolism, that heat can be used for the means can be used by the microbes themselves for their metabolic activity and the growth. Okay, so it is always ideal to have microorganisms which can grow a relatively little bit higher temperature around the 40 to 45 degrees or around, for example, 50 degrees, depending upon the microorganisms that we select. Okay, compared to if it is having a temperature of temperature to 25 or, for example, 20 degrees for the growth. So optimum growth will be around the 40 to 50 degrees Celsius. Okay, so that will what will it reduce? It will reduce the cost of the cooling cost that we require, and it is mostly affecting when we have the large scale fermentation systems. Okay, for the larger scale, when you have, so for example, 100 to 1000 liters scale of fermenter systems, then a lot of energy is consumed to maintain that adequate or optimum temperature. Okay, that is required for the fermentation process. So coming to the 10 point, it should be noted that the reaction of the organisms with the equipment and the suitability of organisms for the process to be used. So, as we have seen that there are three different types of the fermenters, like we have the batch type, fed batch type, and the perfusion reactors. But what about the materials of construction for these type of fermenters or the reactors? So generally, three main components means the reactors are either made up of, for example, the steel, okay, or it is made up of the glass, okay, or if you see the traditional processes, right? So we have already seen in our earlier classes that how the evolving, how the reactor design and how the reactors have evolved with time. Okay, so if you see, there are generally three classes of the reactors. Mostly, if you see in our daily applications in the labs or in the industries, there are two types these days. It is the steel based or the glass based fermenters. And if you see the traditional fermentation, especially in the food for the production of the food or alcoholic beverages, the wood is used. Okay, as a means to make that those type of reactors. But depending upon the type of material, so we know that each and every microorganisms have a different adhesion. So yeah, for example, by now also you have seen that microorganisms such as viruses, when they are at a different substrate, that their life or their means their longevity actually varies. So similarly with the bacteria or other microorganisms, what happens? Depending upon the surface, either it is a metallic surface or it is a glass surface, they have a different bonding strength or the adhesion, okay, with the different substrate. Some of the microorganisms are generally, especially with the metals, in the case of the metals, they adhere strongly onto this type of metallic substrate, and they form some sort of a biofilm. Okay, it means biofilm is nothing but a large amount of these microorganisms are depositing on the surface of this surface of the metals. Okay, and they form some sort of a thin layer onto the metallic surface. So whenever, for example, in a bioreactor, you are carrying out a fermentation process, and you know that in a bioreactor there are different components like stirrer, agitators, and they are all basically metallic components. And so, if, for example, when these microbes are contact with the different components or the equipments that are present in the fermentation system, and they stand, that means they generally adhere on the surface of these equipments, and they start to grow. Okay, and they start to grow and form a very thin layer of biofilm onto these metallic substrates. Now, for example, you have carried out the first batch of fermentation, and then after that you are going to carry out the second batch of fermentation. So in the case of the industrial fermenters, which are very big in volume and scale, it is very difficult to means remove this some sort of the biofilm that is all that is being formed onto the metallic surfaces. And when the second fermentation is being carried out, and that then in that case, what will happen? This these microbes which have formed a biofilm, they are going to contaminate the whole fermentation. Okay, so that's why it is most of the fermentations in these fermenters are generally made of the glasses. Okay, and glasses means the addition of these bacteria or microbes with the glass surface of the glass is lower comparatively, and we coat the glass with different compounds or different additives so that the addition is further decreased. Okay, so that's why glass is something which is most favorably used for the design of the bioreactors. But again, the glass has issues. So if you are going to make a very high volume or the larger scale reactors, so glass, you know that it easily breaks. And in that case, if you are going to design a large scale reactors, the glass is not very suitable for the designing of those type of reactors. So means in this case, you can see that we have to also look into consideration that we have to develop the microorganisms which will have a lower addition to the different components or the equipments that are present in the bioreactor. Okay, so that is one of the important point that you need to be noted, because that is also going to affect your fermentation process. Then comes the stability of the organisms, and we already talked that if these particular microorganisms can be genetically modified. Okay, so like we talked about this temperature tolerance. Okay, so we can easily achieve this if, for example, any microorganisms have a temperature of like optimum temperature 10 degree, but you want to convert it into I means it, you have to, we want to develop a microorganisms which can tolerate this temperature range. So you can, so if that this wild strain can is genetically modifiable, then you can easily design a vector system, or you can easily modify the genes in such a way that that it is able to grow at a comparatively higher temperature. Okay, so for that the genetic modifications are required. Okay, so it is always desirable that your targeted microorganisms can be easily genetically modified. Okay, then the productivity of the organism measured. So one of the important thing is that in this case, if you see the productivity of the organism, it is how does the productivity of the organisms are measured. Okay, so it is measured in the ability of the microorganisms to convert the substrate, right? So we have talked about the substrate into the product. So how much substrate is converted into the product uh, to give a high yield of product per unit time. So here it comes an important parameter like we are going to, so if you are asked that how the productivity of the microorganisms are measured in a fermentation process, so it tells that how much amount of the substrate, for example, substrate in the gram per liter, that is, for example, the glucose, maybe the your carbon source. Okay, how much of it is converted into the product, again, which is a gram per liter. And this conversion and the rate of conversion, that can be determined from that how much time it is taking to convert that particular substrate to the product. So if you see the overall productivity of the organisms, it is measured in the terms of the gram per liter. Okay, where it tells you the change in the concentration of the substrate to the product. And since it is measuring the rate, so we have a time, that is, for example, it may be hour, or it minute. Generally it is a gram per liter per hour. Okay, so this is the unit which is used to determine the productivity of any microorganisms. Okay, and then the 13th point we already talked is that how easily this product can be recovered, for example, from the culture. So if, for example, if you have, for example, the micro the biomass. Okay, and you have, for example, your product only, then it is very easy to separate the microbe and the product, because microorganisms, for example, we have talked about, they have a size in the 10 micron, and the product may be solubilized, for example, in the growth media component. So you can just do the simple filtration and then separate it out. But if some other bioproducts are produced, right? So different other strategies need to be used so that these two components are removed. Okay, and then we obtain this product, and then after obtaining your product, you have to purify And you have to purify and you concentrate your product. So there are several steps that are need to be done. Not only the separation is not only the important step. After separation, you have to do the purification and the concentration of your product to get the higher yield and higher good quality of the product. So it is always important that if you have the lower mixture of this type of individual components, you can easily carry out the recovery process. Okay, so this has been, so if you are asked what are the ideal characteristics of the industrial stain, so these are the very basic characteristics that are required when you are going to design an industrial stain. So if you were also asked like why, means why do we require to do so much of steps or so much of efforts are required in developing such industrial stain. So what is the main target is always the economic development. So the industries you would like to always develop a process which can be easily scalable. Okay, that you can easily move it from the lab scale to the pilot plant processes, and then the overall economic cost should be very as low as possible. So then only it can easily be, so final product that you are obtaining will be of lower cost, and it can be used by in the higher larger volumes, for example. So always that it is means it is a motivation. The industries always would like to have any process which can easily be scaled. Okay, and the overall economics of it is the lower. Then you have to you have to focus on the fermentation time. So always the fermentation time should be lower, and the undesirable pigments or bioproducts should be the production should be lower. It should also have the lower oxygen demand, okay, and foaming characteristics, and it able to metabolize, for example, the inexpensive substances. So these points actually summarize what we have discussed in the last two slides. And then because we know that the wild strain actually produces a mixture of the chemically closely related substances, and in the case of the mutant, so we will see that how we can develop the mutant of a wild strain. Okay, so once we are synthesizing the mutant, so what it able to do is it can synthesize one component as the main product. So the byproducts are removed, and only one particular components are being produced when you are going to select a mutant of a particular wild strain. And if only one product is produced, then it can easily be recovered. Okay, and the another thing is the change in the genotype of the organism. So means if you are, for example, going to synthesize a very new metabolites that may not be produced by the natural microorganism, that type can also be done. So we will look into this those things, that how you can if you are going to design, so some biomolecules, for example, are not naturally produced by their biochemical pathways, okay, or their metabolic pathways, but you can do some sort of genetic modifications or some sort of targeted insertion of the genes or metabolic pathways in such a way you can design to produce new metabolites, completely new metabolites, which is cannot be produced by the natural systems. Okay, and so those things we can do. So those things comes into the changing of the genotype of the microorganisms. And then you have to select, for example, when you are developing the mutants, you have to select those particular mutated stains. So how we do to that selection, it is by using some sort of antibiotic. So we look into that how we do these type of steps. So first of all, before we go into those individual steps, it is very important to know that what type of characteristics you would like to introduce into the microbes, or which are going to be the part of the industrial stain. So for developing this type of industrial stain or the microbes, generally there are five main steps, okay, which are involved. So what are those five main steps are there? Okay, so the five main steps are that isolation of the industrial microorganisms. So first we need to isolate. We talked about in the earlier case, in the case of the wild stain, sometimes there are the mixture of microorganisms, for example, which are producing a particular biochemical. So among that, we have to isolate that which one is producing the highest yield. Okay, and then you have to isolate that particular microorganisms. Okay, and then you have to screen them for their product formation. Okay, so we have to find out when the screen them means that you have to see that what are the products that are producing, and what are the byproducts that are there. Okay, so for example, how do we do the stem? So suppose you went to any particular place, okay, and you find that, for example, a particular means you find out in a particular area. So I think, for example, let us take an example. I think we have discussed in the last class. So suppose we go to a volcanic region, okay, and we know that in the volcanic region the soil that is there, they are very much rich in the component of the sulfur, okay, and you wanted to try to extract the microorganism which produces this sulfur, okay. So you what you will do, you will go to that particular volcanic region, okay, and you will take a particular amount of the soil, okay, from the particular, for example, the place, okay. When you are going to see that what are the components present in the soil, you will find there are several lot of hundreds or 300 different or 400 different type of microbial stains are there, okay. So or different microbes are there, but so how do you select from among them that which one is responsible for the production of the sulfur? Okay, so how do we screen them? So we have to screen those microbes, okay, those 300 and 400 microbes, to find out which one is producing the highest concentration of the sulfur with the lowest concentration of any other byproducts, right? So like this, we have to screen the microorganisms, and then isolate a single microorganism which we are going to use it for the production of the sulfur. For example, which will be used for any industrial application and so on. So this is so means so when you are going, so first of all, when you are taking the soil, so whatever the microbial stain which comes under it is called the, or for example, the wild stain. And then, for example, you select a particular microorganisms which can produce the sulfur at a very high concentration. Then you use that microorganism, and then you do subsequent steps or modifications, like either you do the mutation, okay, or you do, for example, the genetic modification, so that you genetically modify that, so that it you further improve the yield, concentration, and not only that, you also improve that production of you reduce the production of the byproducts, okay, further, and it should able to withstand the higher temperature that is there during the fermenter. So those things you can do with the different mutation and the genetic modifications, okay. So first, so if you see that different steps that are involved in this developing of this type of stains for the industrial fermentation. So first is the isolation. Okay, so you are going to isolate the microorganisms, okay, and then you screen them. So the next step, like you can see here, this is a step 2. So this is a step 1 where you are isolating the microorganisms. Then the steps 2, you are screening them to find out which one is, for example, producing the maximum concentration of the sulfur, okay. And then you identify the metabolites. So whatever the particular microorganisms that you have selected, you will see that how much the sulfur is produced, how much the other byproducts are produced, and what are the other things it is able to produce, okay. And then you select that particular stain which is giving you the highest substrate concentration and the lowest byproduct formations, okay. And after that you have selected, then you have to maintain that particular microbial isolate, so which is also a very important step, okay. So you have to always maintain the whatever the isolate you have developed from this, for example, a mixture of other microbes, okay. So you have to maintain them so that they are viable. Viable means they are alive and they are able to carry out their the cell cycles. So cell cycle is required for their growth, right? So that their biomass concentration or their cellular concentration is it can be increased. So we need to maintain those microbial isolates, okay. And then after that we have to go for the stain improvement. So these are the steps that I was talking of, the mutation or the genetic modifications, right? So these are the steps which will be used to improve the stain, okay, so that it can be easily be used for the industrial fermentation. Like for example, it should able to grow at high temperatures, it should able to withstand the higher substrate or the higher product concentrations, right? And it should always produce the lower product byproducts, okay. So you can see these are the several very basic steps that need to be carried out for the conversion of particular, for example, the wild strain to the the industrial stain, industrial microbial stains, which will be used in the industries for the production of any particular biochemicals. So anyone has any doubts or questions till now? Anyone? Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Anyway, so these are the five stages that are there for the industrial microbial stain, and how do we then, for example, what are the approaches that are there? So in the stain improvement, so we have talked about the step number 5, which is the stain improvement. So how do we go for the improvement of the stains? So we look into that, what are the very basic steps that are there for the stain improvement, and we'll look into the details of it. So if you see the stain improvement, so there are 5 steps, which are, first of all, it's the screening. So the screening means the selection of your microorganisms or the isolates, which can produce a new particular metabolites. Okay, and then comes the other steps, the chemical modifications, where we actually modify the microbial substances. Then comes the biotransformation, which is a changing in the chemical molecule by means of a microbe or enzyme reaction. So generally, we have talked about this earlier. So if you have some sort of a particular chemical molecule, and onto which the enzymes that are released by the microbes can act, or the microbes can itself act as a catalyst and then convert a particular chemical molecule to any other some sort of a value added products. Okay, so in that case we have the biotransformation. Then the point number 4, which is on the interspecific protoplast fusion or the recombination. We have already talked about, like, for example, if you want to develop a thermotolerant microbial stain, that means you want to develop a stain which can grow at a high temperature, for example, the 40 to 45 degree Celsius. So how do you do that? So generally, we try to carry out some sort of a protoplast fusion or the recombinations. Okay, or for example, you can do, for example, the point number 5, that the gene cloning or the recombinant DNA technology, where the gene of particular interest may be transferred between the unrelated stains. Okay, which are the producer of known substances. So these are the fourth and fifth techniques. Generally, we carry out the protoplast fusion. So we look into details how we can fuse two different protoplasts so that the genetic informations are combined. Okay, and new or hybrid substances are actually produced. So this is one of the approach. So these approaches will actually change depending upon the cells. So because you know that cells can be of two types. In the plants, we have some sort of plant cells. In the animals, we have the animal cells. So the techniques of these modifications, okay, and also plant cells are also used for in the bioreactors for the production of particular chemicals. So for example, some of the hormones or the growth factors, okay, are actually being produced by, for example, by the plant cells. Okay, and in that case, for example, the protoplast fusion, interspecific protoplast fusion, is one of the techniques by which you can combine the genetic information of two different plants. Now coming to the gene cloning and the recombinant DNA technology. So as I talked to you, for example, you want to design a microbe in which you would like to, for example, means you want to improve the thermotolerant, that it should be able to grow at a temperature of 40 to 50 degrees Celsius. Then how do you do that? Okay, so you have your particular stain developed, which is producing your desired product. Okay, what you do, so you take out a particular the gene, that is the plasmid or the gene of that microorganisms. Okay, and there are other microbes, for example, which can which are able to grow in the hot water, like we have the in the volcanic regions. So in those regions also there are microbes which can grow in the hot water, because the lakes and other water bodies that are there, they are comparatively at a higher temperature. So somehow those microbes are able to adjust to that high temperature of the water bodies, and they are able to grow. So what we do is we take out their targeted gene, okay, and we find out from that gene sequence. We do the gene sequencing, genome sequencing of a particular of those bacteria which can grow at high temperature in natural condition, and we take out that particular gene of interest, okay, and then we insert that particular gene of interest to the into the plasmid of this type, into a plasmid, and then we, for example, genetically modify that your targeted microorganism. So after, if successfully you are able to insert that gene which is responsible for its viability or its growth at high temperature, then what will happen, your desired strain will produce your desired product, right, and as well as it will able to produce that desired product at the high temperature. So this is a very general technique which is used. We will see that each and every experimental steps how these modifications are being done. Okay, and so these are done generally through this gene cloning or the rDNA technology, which is the recombinant DNA technology. Okay, and like this is one of the example of a temperature. So there are other conditions, like if your process is acidic in nature, okay, so then you can design your microbes in such a way it can grow in the acidic environment or the basic environment in the fermenter systems. So like this we can we do several activities for the, so these are the 5 steps for the strain improvement, and these are the 5 steps how we can produce the industrial microbial stains. Okay, so next we just before we go to the the techniques, actual experimental techniques on how we can screen the microorganisms and how we can modify them, let us look into one of the case study. The case study in this case is the means how we can means how by improving the microorganisms, how we can improve the production of one of the antibiotics, and the penicillin. So penicillin is one of the antibiotic. Also, it is one of the first antibiotic which was started to be produced through the fermentation techniques. Okay, so as we have talked about mutations. Okay, so how do we do the mutations? So mutations can actually be done by 2 different routes, which we are going to see in detail in the subsequent slides. So in the case of the mutations, there are some chemical agents. So there are physical and the chemical approaches. So for example, one of the physical approaches is by using some sort of an ultraviolet light, okay, or the UV light. So by using the UV light at a particular intensity, okay, and for example, for when a particular time of the exposure of this UV, what happens, the so in the case of the genes, so what is the basic things that we have the DNA strands, right? So the DNA contains all the genetic informations. So what, when we are when we are shining, for example, the UV light onto the surface of the DNA, there is some chemical modifications that are undergoing. Some changes are undergoing in the DNA. Okay, and that changes so when there is some change in this DNA. So we have here the nucleotides and nucleosides. Okay, and the main DNA we know is made up of these ATGC base pairs, right? So when we will look in the DNA structure, okay, and we will look at when you are signing the UV light, what is the chemical change that is occurring in the DNA strands. Okay, so we will look into very details, but to give you an overview, so using this UV light, you can actually mutate. You can induce some sort of a mutation into the DNA strand. Okay, and when this particular DNA strand undergoes a mutation, so it might be a beneficial or it might be a non-beneficial mutations. Okay, so by several strategies, what we found that if particular a particular base sequence is actually mutated or it's changed, then it is leading to the higher production of the penicillin. Okay, so after when this means by using this UV light, this microbial stain which was responsible for the production of the penicillin was mutated, we found that it is able to produce now the higher quantity of the penicillin. So if you see the first cultures, when firstly this Penicillium notatum was discovered as a wild strain. So this one is a wild strain. So it was able to grow under the static conditions. Okay, means only static condition. And in the fermenter system, you know that if you are going to design a fermenter, it is not a static condition. So it is means all the growth media components are continually mixed by the agitator, so that we have the improved heat mass transfer and the mixing of these microorganisms with the growth media components. Okay, but in the earlier wild strain, they were only able to grow under static conditions, and if it is under such type of mixing conditions and you have the stresses, so in that case, what would happen? The microbes would this type of Penicillium notatum, the wild strain, this one would die because it would not able to withstand this stress or the forces that is generated by the mixing of the this agitator or the impeller in the bioreactors. Okay, and another thing that happened was it yielded low concentrations of the penicillin. So whatever the amount of penicillin that was produced in the terms of, for example, gram per liter, the concentrations was lower. Okay. Then in 1943, there was another strain which was like called Penicillium chrysogenum was isolated, and it was improved through the mutation. So we talked about this UV based mutation. So some mutation was done. So the genetic sequence that is there, the genome was sequenced. Okay, and it was strategically modified at some particular ends. Okay, and it was found that when now it was being modified to mutation, so it was able to grow under the aerobic condition and the stirred fermenter. So you can see that by making this genetic modification, now this microorganisms was able to grow in a bioreactor in which we have the aerobic environment. So aerobic environment is introduced by this purging of the oxygen gas by this at the bottom of the reactors, and then we have the stirring, so which is being imported by the impellers. Okay, so it was now able to grow in this type of fermenters, and when it was growing, there was a 55-fold increase in the the yield of the penicillin than the original static culture. So you can see that tremendous improvement by 55 times was obtained. So if, for example, if initially it was producing 1 gram per liter, now it was almost producing the 55 gram per liter. Okay, so when we have this so much high conversion of your if your substrate to the product, it also leads to the formation of the lower byproducts, right? So in that case, when you have this type of very like 55 gram per liter means you are having the penicillin in this bioreactor, then we require a very less number of downstream processes to separate and purify that product, for example. Okay, so you can see, so this is one of the case study example of the penicillin, by using this type of a mutation, we can significantly improve the productivity, and not only the productivity, we can also improve, for example, the processes or the reactors in which, or the fermenters in which you are going to produce this system. Okay, so now because in the industrial fermenters mostly they are aerobic in nature, and they need to be stirred so that uniform mixing and heat transfer, mass transfer, and the mixing of components and the microbes should takes place. So you can see this one of the example how this type of microbial strain improvement can help in the production of your targeted metabolites. Then, so let us now we will look into that. What are the different techniques of the screening of the microorganisms? Okay, and there are different processes out there. So anyone has any doubts or questions? Anyone until now?
No,
Okay,
sir.
so if not, then maybe we will start this new topic on screening on the microorganism from the next class. Okay, so thank you everyone.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.